Hi everyone, welcome back to another video for PSO2 NGS. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do our semi-regular check-in with the game, where we look back at the last few months of content updates and just try and get an idea of the direction the game's going in, whether I feel that it's been a positive improvement in the last few months or whether there's been any issues, and just a general overview of how I feel NGS is performing at the minute. We will kind of take into consideration some population figures as well, although they are quite difficult to use accurately for reasons I'll go into later. But that'll give us a little bit of an idea as well. So what we'll do is we'll go for about the last 3 months of updates. I think the last time we did this was about April time, so we'll start from May 2025 and we'll just go from there. Now, one thing I do want to say just before we get into this is I appreciate that the state of NGS is a very, let's say, polarizing topic. I realise there are a lot of people who really dislike this game and like to make it known on every single video that they dislike this game. Now, you have the right to voice your criticisms about the game, but do it in a civil way. There is a difference between voicing your civil displeasure with the game and just attacking other people, so please try and keep it civil in the comments for this. So we'll start off with the May 2025 updates. So May brought with it the Halfa Super Origin Festival, which, if you remember, was the festival where we got the new outfits for Faria and Kanui and new hairstyles and everything. So if we just scan through some of these updates, I realise this one's actually right in the end of April, but I think we can count it. We've got the usual scratches, which I'm not going to touch too much on scratches unless they're very special ones, because scratches at this point are just a part of the game and have been since like PSO2. So you are always going to get Arcs Cash scratches with outfits, and that's never going to change. So the first big thing we got in May was they brought back the Malignant Darkfall Solus quest, which actually I really enjoyed this. I think Darkfall Solus is quite a polarizing fight in that the regular version of the fight, honestly, I don't think has aged that well. I think when it first came out, it was actually a really fun fight, but as we've done it more and more, you realise how easy this fight is and how slow Darkfall Solus is. The Malignant version is much better fight. I think it is a much more fun fight overall, and I did really enjoy this. I do kind of wish that they would just make these 8-player Malignant versions permanent. I realise the 4-player one is always there for you to do, but I kind of feel that the Malignant one should just become the default, to be honest. That's become particularly apparent recently with the uprated Solus fight that we've got recently, which is regular Solus, because that is incredibly easy despite being really high level. So this also brought in more ways to get the Legendios weapons. Legendios was a bit of a miss in my opinion. Although it was cool to have this new kind of rarity coming into the game, it wasn't really implemented that well. Honestly, they kind of brought Legendios in and it was almost replaced immediately. I feel like I never really had its time to shine. We did also get this 2-way battle drill as well. This was kind of an interesting limited quest. As you'll know if you've watched my channel for a while, I'm generally not a big fan of the way that NGS does the constant limited quests rollouts, but it's clear that this is the direction of travel that Sega want the game to go in, and it's not going to change. So as much as people complain about it, it's not going to change. This one actually wasn't too bad. I seem to remember it was one where you had like one party on the inside of a maze and the other party on the outside, and as the party on the outside advanced around, they could kind of unlock extra stuff for the middle. So it was kind of good that it was like a cooperative LTQ. We did get another scratch there with all the elf gear. Then on the 13th of May, we did get these Super Origin Festival. Now these festivals, I do kind of feel that they are coming along extremely commonly. We seem to get them every few months now. Now, I'm not against them because they do give really nice boosts. You know, they're particularly the boosts to things like the item lab that make things like grinding easier to do. I really like that because the grinding in NGS is one of my real bugbears with the game. I really don't enjoy interacting with the item lab at all, if I can help it. It's just a horrible experience. It costs a ton of money and it's just a really bloated experience. I really don't like it. But given us these campaigns where they do reduce the costs and everything, I do really like. Also giving us things like free SG scratch draws is always a good thing. So next we had some more LTQs. These ones, I did not enjoy this, to be honest. So with this one, it was the Dustal Vera suppression op, which was I think it was previously an urgent quest, and then I think they changed it to an LTQ. And last year, the boss at the end was a Gigantix, but this year, for some reason, which I'm yet to understand, they changed it and made it so it wasn't a Gigantix anymore. They did do this with another LTQ as well, where they downgraded the boss at the end to like a regular enemy or an elite. That kind of killed it a bit for me because there was absolutely no challenge. At least with the Gigantix, at least it would hit hard. But yeah, it just wasn't a challenge at all, so I didn't really enjoy that. Writhing Malice LTQ. This one wasn't too bad. Honestly, the best thing about this LTQ was the music. It used the Minds music from PSO, which I really appreciated. Got some more SG scratches. This also introduced a new type of item called Total Wear, which just completely transforms your character into an NPC. Really good if you want to cosplay as an NPC. It makes it a lot easier and a lot more cost effective rather than buying all the parts individually. I do feel it's a little bit of cop out in that it takes space in the scratch. But if you do want to cosplay an NGS character, it was definitely the best way of doing it. So then, end of May, we got a rerun of Malignant Darfal's Dalian. Again, Malignant Dalian is a really, really fun fight. I really enjoy this. I think Dalian is one of the stronger Falls fights in the game as well. And Malignant Dalian is definitely a really good one. So I was glad to see this come back. Again, I feel this 8-player version should just replace the regular version, honestly. And we also got a collab with That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. This is one thing I'll always kind of find funny about NGS, is that there is always this discourse with NGS from certain people in the community. I realise there are a lot of people who like NGS as well, but there is a very vocal minority for NGS who like to, crap on the game at every opportunity. And they quite often say that the game's always going to be like, it's end of service, it's going to come to end of service. There is no way that NGS will come to end of service when we get scratches with really, really popular anime like this. I know these scratches are not for everyone, I know a lot of people don't care about them. For me personally, I wasn't really bothered about this scratch at all because I haven't seen the anime, I'm not really that interested. But the fact they've got the money to be able to do these kind of scratches means that they're clearly doing okay. Just to touch on this as well, I think that when people go on about the end of service of NGS, I do kind of feel that they are missing the point somewhat, because if NGS did end of service, let's be theoretical and say that Sega announced end of service for NGS. If they did that, going off previous experience with the Phantasy Star games, they would probably sunset the global version first, and the Japanese version would probably go on for a while longer. That is how it has always been. We're going back to PSO Blueburst, PSU, the global version always sunsets first. So these people who want end of service are essentially wanting the game to just continue on the Japanese version. I think the thinking behind it is that they want NGS to sunset so we can get PSO3. But the reality is, if NGS doesn't do well on the global side, do you really think they would release PSO3 in the West? I doubt it. I really, really doubt it. If the global version really is as bad as people say it is, then why would Sega bother investing in releasing the next game globally? They wouldn't. So I kind of feel that all these calls for like sunsetting NGS and getting rid of it and moving on are totally missing the point, because the reality is that if they do that, I'd probably only release the next game on the Japanese side anyway. Sorry, rant over. So we did get this scratch, like I say, which again was quite an in-depth one as well. We got line strike cards and everything from it. We did get some more LTQ reruns. Now these, I'm never a big fan. You probably know if you've seen the channel for a while, but I am never a big fan of LTQ reruns, particularly if they don't change much, which these ones really didn't. I feel it's very easy content for Sega to do. I guess it's okay for people who maybe missed the LTQ the first time round, or if you did enjoy the LTQ, then it's cool that it comes back again. But it does also feel like very easy content to just throw out. So that was it for May. So May I would probably call a slightly lighter month overall. There was quite a lot of reruns and things like that, but we did get the start of the festival, so a bit of a mixed bag, I would say. So let's move on to June. So June brought in the major summer update, which was the Realm of Awakened Fantasies. So with June, again, we were kind of finishing off the festival as well from last month. So we got a new mini story episode. Now, these mini story episodes, I think, are a little bit divisive. I know that a lot of people have an issue with the NGS story, with the fact that there really isn't a whole lot to it at the moment, and there are huge gaps between each episode, and I do sympathise with that. I do think that Sega could really do a lot better with the story for NGS. I do feel it's an area where they're really dropping the ball. The last major update story did set some interesting things in motion, but it's just, I do kind of share the frustrations with people on this, that it is just taking far too long to get any advancement on the story. These mini episodes, I think, were Sega's effort to try and to kind of quiet the storm a little bit. I don't think it's really worked. These mini episodes are generally just a couple of cutscenes and really don't amount to much at all. There are some of them that I generally just haven't even bothered doing yet as well. I just don't think they really give enough to the game to really justify them. I'm not necessarily against mini episodes, but I kind of feel that the mini episodes should be reserved for maybe tell us a bit more about some of the characters that we never see otherwise. There are plenty of characters in NGS around the cities that we don't really know anything about. You might maybe see them in the central comic possibly, but in-game they don't really amount to anything. I mean, how many times have you seen an NPC show up in an emergency trial and you have no idea who it is? There's a lot of that in NGS where there's just a lot of characters that really don't contribute anything to the story. And I feel that the mini episodes should be more used to kind of fill in a bit of background on those, let us know what they do, let us know, why they're in the city, what are they doing. I feel that just giving us a little bit more about characters we're already familiar with doesn't really add a whole lot to the game, personally. But I also do agree as well that I do feel that the main story episodes should be sped up a bit more, because it is far too long to wait between them. That, again, is one of my biggest issues with NGS at the minute. So we did get this new limited time quest as well, the Shadow of the Fallen Star. This, on the subject of story, I guess this is kind of one way they're getting around it a little bit, because this was actually a story-driven LTQ. So this kind of introduced the concept of the high enemies and kind of teased Altar Realm a little bit. So it's basically a Crimson Realm that would spread all over Retem, and at the end of it they do introduce some new enemies that you've never seen before. So this was kind of interesting because it was actually involving the story in an LTQ. And the actual quest itself was kind of whatever. It was a typical sort of run through an area, fight some harder enemies at the end. But it was kind of cool that it had this Link 2 story. We then got Citadel of the Forest LTQ, which again is another rerun. The only thing I really enjoyed about this is the fact that, again, it used PSO music. So it used the forest music, which is quite nice. And then they did a thing where halfway through they basically changed all the enemies and everything. This is one mechanic I don't like with LTQs that they've done in a few of them, where they'll run an LTQ for a little while and then they'll basically just change a few things in the LTQ and run it again for another week or so. And quite often it'll just be, okay, you're running the LTQ backwards, or hey, we change a few enemies. There's never really a massive change to them usually. So I'm not a huge fan of that personally. Okay, so then we did get a level cap increase, and also an equipment enhancement cap as well, up to 100, which made everyone do a collective groan, because everyone hates grinding. They also introduced the 8th augment slot and 12-star armor. And crucially, a new augment called Ultia Domina. There's some new Line Strike cards. Again, Line Strike is kind of a mixed thing, because I imagine a lot of the player base probably don't even really engage with Line Strike. But at the same time, for those who do enjoy Line Strike, it is nice to get new cards. And it was nice to see some cards that were from the older PS games as well. So a lot of these were from PSU and Phantasy Star Portable 2. Amusingly, I did find it quite funny that they gave us Nagisa from PSP2 Infinity, because Infinity never released outside of Japan. So I imagine a lot of people on the Western side probably don't even know who Nagisa is. Yeah, it was really nice to see PSU getting some recognition though. Although not so much Ethan, because everyone hates Ethan. They introduced the new animatics face. This, again, if you're into your cosmetic side, this was quite a big improvement. It gave you a lot more different options to work with. The examples they show, not particularly, I mean, what is this? But if you wanted a kind of anime style face, this was kind of a good template to work with. They also did introduce the free salon at the same time as well, so you could experiment with it a lot easier. They introduced some quality of life improvements, so things like adding a wanted item list display. So every time you got an item on a wanted item list, it would show up to let you know you got one, which was a really nice improvement, honestly. I really am a big fan of quality of life improvements in games. Just as the game goes on, I feel that there should be little tweaks to things here and there just to make the experience a little bit more bearable. So I was really glad to see Sega doing this for NGS. Again, just tons of quality of life. We did get a rerun of the Sonic collaboration to celebrate Sonic's birthday. Again, more Line Strike stuff as well. So Line Strike players were eating good in this month. The big one really for June though was this, which was the new high difficulty quest and the stars crashed, which was Malignant Darkfall's Vial, which was one of the hardest things in the entire game. I don't know if rank 10 Masquerade is harder, because I haven't done rank 10 Masquerade because I'm not that good. But Malignant Vial was no joke, and it actually required a lot of investment in your gear to even be able to run it. Now I did manage to get a couple of players on it, but yeah, it was a very, very hard fight. It was really good to see Sega investing in this though, and actually giving us a really difficult boss fight, because I think some people were complaining that NGS was generally too easy. Although amusingly, when this released, then a lot of people complained it was too hard. I will admit to being very, very salty when this released at first. With this, we also got the introduction of the 13-star Crest weapon series. Now, this, I'll be honest, I was a bit mixed on. Now, I appreciate that when Malignant Vial released, the only way of getting the Crest weapons was through Malignant Vial. Since then, there is a few other ways, but Vial might have the best rates for it, maybe. The issue I had is that it felt like 12-star hadn't really been around very long, and it felt like we were kind of rushing into 13-star weapons. And the other thing is, as well as I kind of touched on this earlier, is that 13-star outclassed the Legendios weapons. So Legendios, again, never really got time to shine, in my opinion. Well, hey, it was cool to get some more stuff to strive for, and by locking it behind Vial for a while, it made it so you really had to try to get your 13 stars. Yes, you could also buy them from the player shops, but when Vial was new, these weapons were really expensive. The usual scratches and everything. We got the return of the Sonic LTQs, which I don't mind these. I will happily run these every time they get renewed, because they are just genuinely fun quests. So we did also get a summer scratch with things like the bath towels and everything, which I'm sure some people will be very happy about. And that kind of rounded out June, really. So June was definitely a bigger month. I think that the introduction of Malignant Vial was probably the big one for that month, and a lot of people were very focused on that when it released. I feel that, personally, I don't really feel like NGS is the kind of game where it necessarily needs to have really hard content, but it is nice to have that there for the people who want to do it. You know, for those people who've absolutely min-maxed their gear and want a big challenge, it's nice to have these things like Ruin Masquerader and Malignant Vial to do that. Realistically, only a small proportion of people are going to be able to do it, but it's nice to have that there for those who really want to test their skills. So yeah, so that was June. So June, overall, I don't think was too bad a month, really. So let's move on to July, finally. So July was kind of the second half of the Realm of Awakened Fantasies update. So the main thing it kicked off with, and again, this is probably the biggest thing for the entire month, really, was the new quest type, Alter Realm Exploration, which is a 32-player quest, which was to defeat these powerful boss enemies, which are the high enemies that were teased in the previous month's limited time urgent quest. Now, Alter Realm, for those who might not have done it, I mean, I imagine most people probably have done by now, but basically you run around the Alter Realm, which is this new map, it's kind of based on Retem a little bit. You can see there are elements of Retem to the map, but there's also all this kind of corruption all over the map, which these sort of cube structures are very, very similar to what you see with the Darkfall Starless and everything. It's almost like a Starless corrupted version of Retem. Now, the way it works, for anyone who hasn't done it, is you basically run around the map with up to 32 people. You kill enemies. After you kill a certain amount of enemies, 2 trials will spawn. You defeat the trials. That will then, ask you to kill more enemies. As you do more trials, you will weaken a gauge that's on the screen, which is the boss's strength gauge. And you basically just do that until the time runs out for the boss invasion. Once the time runs out, the major boss will spawn, which is the high boss, which is either High Renus Retem or High Eliminada. And their strength will be based on however many trials you manage to beat. So I encourage you to basically try and kill stuff as quickly as possible so you could weaken the boss. Because these bosses actually hit really hard. Even with decent gear, High Renus and High Eliminada do actually hit really hard. Again, nothing to the extent of like Malignant Vial or anything, but they do hit hard and they will punish you for messing up. Now, overall, I actually really enjoy Altar Realm. It was nice to have an area where I could just go to and just farm for stuff, because they made it so it was actually a really efficient farming zone as well. Because there's a lot of enemies, you're getting quite high mob density, so it's quite good for farming Mazetta. Pretty much anything in the game that you need would drop there. I think, from memory, I think the only things that didn't drop there when it released was the Ultia Domina capsules. So there was still that incentive to run Malignant Vial to get the materials for that, to be able to make Ultia Domina. But everything else you can get from Altar Realm. Now, does this invalidate a lot of the other parts of the game? To an extent. But honestly, as a PSO player, having an area you can just run through and just farm stuff was a really nice change of pace. I do kind of feel one area that does need improving in Altar Realm, which was the high bosses. Although the high bosses are fun, there are only, I believe there's only 2 of them. I've only seen 2 anyway, High Renus and High Eliminada. I kind of feel it could do with maybe 1 or 2 more, because it does get a little bit repetitive fighting the same boss quite often. But other than that though, I do actually really enjoy the Altar Realm, and it's actually, again, a really, really efficient way of just farming materials. Now, if you're farming money specifically, is doing Dex base faster? Probably, yes. It still amazes me to this day that Dex base rank 1 is still the most efficient way of farming money, but Altar Realm is still really decent money, so if you don't want to subject yourself to Dex spam, then Altar Realm is a really good alternative, and you'll get other materials as you go. So yeah, really, really big fan of Altar Realm, and I hope we do get Altar Realm for other areas. I'm going to assume that we're going to get Altar Realm, Altar Realm Caveris, Altar Realm Steer, and so on as well at some point. It kind of feels like this is the direction the story's going in. So with Altar Realm, we also got the emergence of the new 13-star Duovogue weapons. These are very, very easy to get. So they kind of reminded me of things like the Eridim and Cleridim weapons, where they just drop all the time. They're not as common as those, but you will still get quite a lot of them. However, it was later revealed that these are actually going to be the next upgrade path weapons. So similar to your Excellior weapons that upgraded to Duocellior, Tricellior, and Aquacellior, these are going to upgrade as well. So it actually quite a good idea making them quite common, because it basically meant that you could farm for ones with fixers and farm for ones with decent fixers, with decent EXs on them, because they're going to be upgradable in future. So you just farm for ones with good fixers and fixer, and it made it a bit easier to do that because you got them fairly frequently. We also got new ranks for 2 of the Retem Urgent quest, which was the Mining Rig and Omen of the Planet Break, which is soulless. Now, the Mining Rig, since PSO2, I have never liked the defense quests. I have horrible memories of running Mining Rig defense on base PSO2, because that was a very rough experience. Mining Rig and NGS I don't think is anywhere near as hard, but you do still get some really bad parties for it sometimes, which makes it really stressful and really annoying. So yeah, I'm generally not a big fan of this quest, but it was cool to see it getting an upgrade at least. For Omen of the Planet Breaker, that was super disappointing. I was hoping that for Omen of the Planet Breaker, they would maybe give Soulless some tricks from Malignant Soulless, or make it a generally more challenging fight. It's an absolute joke. He does hit relatively hard because he's level 105. But the issue is that he doesn't get any faster than regular Soulless, so it's a very, very slow fight, and it makes it very easy to just counter everything he does, and there's just no challenge whatsoever to the Soulless fight. So again, I would prefer really if they just scrap the regular versions, honestly, and just give us the Malignant versions as the default. Then moving on, we had a collab with Arcanadia. This, I imagine, was very limited impact. Arcanadia is probably something that appeals a lot more to the Japanese audience. I imagine a lot of people on global side probably had no idea what it is. I assume... Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's plastic model kits. I was going to say, I assume it's plastic model kits because it's by Kotobukiya and they're kind of renowned for doing model kits. So probably a similar thing to like Frame Arms Girl and those kind of scratches. I'm assuming that Sega and Kotobukiya must have a very healthy working relationship because there's a lot of Kotobukiya related scratches. Again, there was a lot to this scratch though. Again, we had like line strike backgrounds and everything as well. So again, new mission pass. Some more revivals. Then we got a revival of the Twin Horn Raven from Beyond limited quest, which if you didn't do that before, that is the quest where you fight Ruin Griffin, which I trip over every single time I try saying it because I instinctively want to call it Gal Griffin. I mean, it is Gal Griffin, let's be real. I don't mind this limited quest. I like the little callbacks to PSO. You know, I like that it uses the central control area music from PSO. I like that they, again, I need to say Gal Griffin, Ruin Griffin, uses the Gal Griffin boss theme. I do like that. I also like, and I don't know how many people will actually notice this, but there's a little sort of Easter egg with this quest where each area you run through is kind of a reference to central control area. So there is a part where you're running down the beach, which, you know, there was a seaside area in central control area in PSO. There is a part where you're high up on the cliffs, which is kind of like mountain from PSO. The only one that's like not referenced as much as maybe jungle, but there is a part of the map you fight where there are a lot of trees around, so maybe that's an effort to try and shoehorn jungle in. But it was kind of cool to see that. Whether it was intentional, I have no idea, but it kind of felt that way. The actual quest itself was okay. I feel like Ruin Griffin is a bit of a disappointing boss in NGS. As someone who obviously has played a ton of PSO, Gal Griffin was a really, really scary boss when you first got to him in PSO. And I feel like he's just not really that intimidating in NGS. But it is cool to see a PSO boss coming back again. And I hope this continues. And with the 25th anniversary of PSO coming up soon, maybe they might dip their toes into that again. And we have seen that there is something coming, so it would be nice. They also gave us an upgrade to the Progress armor, so we can upgrade that to the Eskel armor or Eskel armor laser. Now this, I haven't really gone into this too much because I simply just don't have the materials for it yet. It's quite a recent update this, so I'm still working on it. These armors are quite interesting because one of them is just a straight upgrade to Progress. The other one gives you a ton of health but actually reduces your PP. Now personally, that is not something I'm interested in at all because a lot of the classes that I play are quite PP intensive in terms of the amount they use. So the last thing I want to do is reduce that. But I imagine some classes could probably get away with it quite well. So to make these, you needed a new item called Progress Advance. And the one issue I had with this is that the Progress Advance, when they brought it into the game, originally only dropped from the Ruin Griffin limit time quest, which felt really stupid because they'd literally just introduced this brand new area, Alter Realm, and then like a week or two later, there was no point running Alter Realm because everyone wanted the Progress Advance to upgrade their armors, which you couldn't get in Alter Realm. So it kind of frustrated me that because, again, it was a case of Sega releasing something really interesting and then immediately jumping onto something else. Now, thankfully, they have corrected that somewhat. So again, we've got some more scratches, a new summer scratch, which I know are always very, very popular. Now, not mentioned on here is, I think it's because it was technically right at the beginning of August. But basically, right at the beginning of August, more or less, we got an update, which was an addition to Alter Realm, where they've added the Great Rappies to Alter Realm. I think it's only a 1 week temporary thing, but the Alter Realm Rappies drop beta reactors, so they're really good for farming money. Bear in mind, the area was already pretty good for money anyway. Beta reactors give you another 100,000. But they also drop Progress Advance as well. So they have now said, okay, you can do Alter Realm to get these. Now, the downside is these Rappies are a temporary thing as far as I'm aware. So once the Rappies go, does that mean the Pro Advanced drops are going to stop, or are they just going to work them into Ultra Realm anyway? That I don't know. Overall though, I think July was a pretty interesting month. I think Ultra Realm is definitely the highlight of it. And I am interested to see where they go with the Ultra Realm. I think there's definitely room for improvement with the Ultra Realm. We do know there is another Ultra Realm quest coming as well. Another like quest variant of it. I don't know exactly how it's going to work yet, but I am interested to see what they do with that. I think there is a really big potential to really go ham with this Ultra Realm stuff and really make some crazy things in the game. It does kind of feel that's what we're leaning towards with the story at the minute. They do seem to be focusing on this Ultra Realm quite a bit, so hopefully they do expand upon it. I think the Ultra Realm exploration is definitely a good step in that direction though. So that is the updates for May to July. So what do I think overall? I think generally, a lot of the updates are kind of as you expect. You know, you are always going to get things like LTQ reruns. You are always going to get scratches. That's just kind of the core of the game. And again, for the scratches, I know a lot of people don't like how many scratches there are, but what you have to understand is that the scratches are what make a lot of the money in the game. They're always going to be a thing because they're the thing that brings the money in. And the other thing is the scratches are not a new thing to NGS. They started with the PSO2. I mean, technically, Japanese PSU had some paper mechanics as well, but they were more sort of apparent in base game PSO2. So it's not really even an NGS issue necessarily. So finally, I mentioned it at the start, but I thought we'd have a look at the Steam chart. Now, I know a lot of people who like to dunk on NGS do like raising Steam charts a lot. It seems to be the really common thing to do for more or less any game, where if a game is seen as failing, people really like to, you know, parade the Steam charts numbers. Now, Steam chart is useful for getting a rough idea of a game's population and whether the population is going up or going down. But there are several caveats with it, which I think a lot of people forget about. First caveat, so for PSO2 NGS, the first caveat is that Steam charts, as the name suggests, only cover Steam. So this does not include anyone playing from the Windows Store version. I mean, if you are playing from the Windows Store version, what are you doing with your life? You really need to be playing a different version because that version is terrible. But yeah, the Steam chart only covers the Steam client. So it doesn't include the Windows version, but crucially it also doesn't include the console versions. So we have no idea really how many people are playing NGS on console or how many people are playing on the Windows Store version. Additionally, which again should be obvious, it doesn't include the Japanese server. And it shouldn't take a genius to figure out that a large portion of NGS's operating budget and everything probably comes from the Japanese side, from the transactions from the Japanese server. Global is probably an absolute tiny amount in comparison. You know, we are very much the secondary server, you know. So you can only read into Steam charts so much. It gives you a useful idea of how many are playing on Steam. But yeah, it doesn't include any consoles, doesn't include the Windows version, and doesn't include the Japanese version of the game either. So you can only take it with a grain of salt. Now, looking at these figures, so we can see the all-time peak for NGS was just under 60,000, again, just on Steam, which honestly, for a Phantasy Star game, was pretty good. Phantasy Star is a very, very niche franchise outside of Japan, really, so 60k, pretty good. Now, currently, the 24-hour peak is just over 1,200. The game has been out since 2021. It's a niche franchise. Is 1,200 good? Not particularly, but it's not terrible. I think at 1,200 you are still in the area where you can still find parties and everything reasonably easily. Again, when you're doing all ship matching as well, that will match you with console players and everything as well, so that kind of gets around the issue. 1,200 players, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, 1,200 players is not particularly good, but for a game that's been out for 4 years from a niche franchise, I think it could be worse. You can ignore this 853 because as I'm recording this, it's still morning in the UK. But morning in the UK is very much not peak time for America, which is where most of the global server players probably originate from. So this does pick up more at different times of the day. It's just that as I'm recording this, it's not particularly a good time for America. If we then go down to the sort of rolling month to month, you can see it's a very mixed bag, really. I mean, Going back to 2024, you can see the game was not doing particularly well. You can see it was kind of losing players month to month to month. October, we got a bit of a buff to the player base again. Then again, small decrease. Then we got a big increase in February. I'm assuming that was probably for like a major update or something. Then a big drop off in March. This I think you tend to find quite often with games where if a big update releases, you'll get a big spike in players to check it out, and then once they've checked it out, they'll probably move on to something else. If we look at the last 3 months though, which is what we've been focusing on in this video, from May, you can see in May we actually had about a 9% increase in players on Steam. Then we lost about 3% in June and lost 12% in July. I find it quite interesting actually that we lost players in July, because you would think that Ultra Realm would have actually brought more people in. So I'm not sure what the reason for that is. Maybe there were some other games that people have gone to check out instead. So yeah, I'm really not sure what the reasoning is for a 12% drop off in population. In the last 30 days, I mean, it is technically a gain, but 0.04% is, may as well not be a gain. It's pretty much static. It's going to be interesting to see how the population goes going forward. I think at the moment there is still the justification to keep running the global server, but it is very clear that obviously the Japanese server is very much the driving force behind the money that PSO2 NGS makes, and also just the driving force behind the player base in general. And that is going to be the reason why Sega keep the servers going. I would imagine that if Sega did decide to sunset NGS at some point, they would probably do it similar to how they've done previous games, which is where they would sunset the global version first. That is typically how they've done things in the past. As for whether I think they will sunset NGS, I don't think they will yet. What you have to think of is that 2026 is the 5th anniversary of NGS. That is a perfect time to maybe do something like launch a new expansion or something with major content updates. That seemed like it would be a good point to really put their all into the game and give us like a big content update then. It could be Copium, but it just feels like anniversaries are quite important to Sega. And the 5th anniversary of NGS does seem like a really good opportunity to go for that. They've already said that they are going to be doing like a year-long festival, which is going to have different events going on through the year to celebrate the 5th anniversary. But it's quite clear that we're in a stage with NGS where the game is starting to like tease the new areas and everything, and I feel like we're just waiting for like the next big drop to really push the story on and to push the experience on. Now again, if you look at the headlines going forward, for the on the roadmaps, there is some really interesting things coming down the line. So we do have that PSO collaboration coming later in the year. Well, we assume it's a PSO collaboration. They showed a Rag Rappy for God's sake, so that is going to be really interesting for players like me who grew up playing PSO. I don't know how popular it'll be with people who started with PSO2 or NGS, because they won't have that nostalgia for PSO. But I myself am very excited for it. Screw everyone else, I just want my PSO and NGS. So that's going to be interesting, and it's just going to be interesting to see some of the other things they're bringing in as well. So we're getting the EX styles, which looks like it's going to change how the game works significantly. We're also getting the introduction of skill rings as well. So it's clear that they are wanting to make big changes to the game going forward, and it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the player perception of the game. I do feel like that you do hear a lot of negative about NGS when you're in game, or when you're on, particularly on like YouTube comments and everything as well. There is a lot of negativity, particularly on the global side, towards this game, and a lot of it is either unwarranted or is misguided. Don't get me wrong, there are some genuine concerns with NGS, and there are some genuine things I would love to see change, but a lot of it does kind of seem a bit bandwagony and just people jumping on the game for not much reason. So I'm hoping that with the updates that Sega have got planned going forward, and with the 5th anniversary of NGS coming into view, maybe that's a good time for Sega to really kickstart NGS and really sort of give players what they're wanting. For me personally, I'm kind of happy with where NGS is. I feel like it's the kind of game where I jump on it a few times a week. It's not my main game by any means, despite me being an NGS creator. I honestly play PSO Blue Burst a lot more. That's just me. I have massive nostalgia for that game. For me, NGS is the kind of game where you can just kind of jump into it, do dailies, do a few runs of something, log off, log onto it again next day, do the same again. it's the kind of game where it doesn't require a lot of time investment and it respects your time quite well, I think. So I think some of the criticism of NGS is definitely unfounded, but there is some that is definitely legitimate, and I think all people need to think about is when they are criticising the game, just try and be civil with it. There is a lot of people who will just hound people on this game for no reason, and it needs to stop. We really just need to, you know, as a player base in general, we need to be more respectful to each other. We're all playing this game. We all clearly like Phantasy Star to some description. We're all playing this game. You know, yes, we can agree there are issues with the game that need solving, but you know, let's try and talk about it constructively and civilly rather than just hounding each other. So that's my little message. I know some people will take no notice of it, but I'm saying my piece. So yeah, we'll end that video there for today, I think. We'll probably do another one of these maybe in about another 3 months, and we'll sort of check back in with the game again. I like to do them about every 3 or 4 times a year roughly, just to get a good idea of how the game has changed in the last few months. If you do have any opinions on how NGS is doing, or anything you'd like to see Sega do with the game, feel free to drop it in the comments. Again, just to reiterate, please be civil with the comments in this. There is no need for people to attack each other or anything, so please just be civil with the comments. I'm all for people putting criticism of the game in the comments if they are not happy with it. If it's fair criticism, that is totally fine, but just no hounding other players because there's just no need for it. But yeah, if you do have anything to say, leave it in the comments below. If you have enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, or join as a member on YouTube if you want to. You can also follow or sub over on my Twitch channel, which is Section Skylie. I have X and Blue Sky that are both Section Skylie, and you can also join my Discord channel as well, which there'll be a link to in the description. Yeah, whatever you're doing, hope you have a good week, and I'll see you guys next time.